physically, I wasn't too bad, but when your head isn't in it, it's so much harder. You'd rather run with a pain than have your head not in it, because it was turmoil. It was absolute turmoil.
Hi everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of 80% Mental, the podcast that answers all the questions you might have about the psychology of sport, performance, health, and well-being. On today's episode, we are going to revisit a topic that I've dived into before. I had a good friend of mine, Greg Hewitt, on the podcast in the last series, and he had just got back from running the Marathon des Sables. So we talked a lot about the psychology of endurance. And I kind of wanted to dive back into that topic a little bit because it's so interesting. But I wanted to revisit that topic with the guest that I've got today, who I met a few weeks ago at Cheltenham Science Festival. And some of you might know who this person is. She's been described as one of the most recognizable faces within British running. This is Susie Chan. Susie, I'm absolutely thrilled that you agreed to come on the podcast when I asked you. Welcome to 80% Mental.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I really enjoyed our chat in Cheltenham. I'm sure we'll dive into some of the things that we talked about, but I learned a lot about some of the things I'm already doing, and found it quite reassuring that I wasn't alone in that space, in that mental headspace that I sometimes go to in the races I do.
Yeah, well, we'll get into all of that stuff in the next sort of hour or so. But for those of you who don't know, just to introduce Susie, Susie is an endurance runner and Peloton instructor who enjoys running anything from 1 mile to 100 miles and more. She's run races all over the world, including all of the world's marathon majors and some of the toughest endurance events in the world, including the Marathon des Sables, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Can't wait to get into all that stuff, talk about some of your experiences and talk about the psychology behind some of the stuff that you do. But I'm also joined today by another special guest, and that is Dr. Julie Johnston. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Pete. Thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to chatting to both you and Susie about the topics, the endurance running and the psychology behind that.
Julie, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And just again, by way of introduction, Julie is a senior lecturer in psychology at Nottingham Trent University. She's been there for the last 10 years. But before that, you were also an ex. Well, before that, you weren't an ex. I told you it was going to be me that screwed up. But before that, you were an international swimmer for Ireland and Northern Ireland over a 10-year period.
Yeah, so I competed for Northern Ireland, my first senior international in 1998 at Commonwealth Games. And then I retired from the sport in 2008 in April of that year.
Cool. And you kind of bring all of that experience and knowledge from being an athlete into the world of academia. So you, Julie, mentors and helps coaches and athletes and parents as well, who are kind of looking to follow their dreams in sport. So yeah, I'm thrilled to have you both on the podcast. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion around psychology of endurance. Let's get straight into it then. So Susie, like I said before, you've been described as one of the most recognizable faces in the British running community. You've run the Marathon des Sables, is it 4 times? Is that right?
Yes, 4 times. I've been in that desert a few times. And then the very last time I went back as part of the press team and saw it from a very different angle. And I was glad I did that last, because when you see it from the outside in, it looks terrifying.
And a couple of other things as well. You've broken the 12-hour treadmill world record. You finished all of the world's marathon majors. What's the one thing out of all of your experiences that you've sat down afterwards and thought, wow, that was intense?
There's two races which really stood out for me, and one was a race called the Jungle Ultra, where I ran from the Andes down to the Amazon basin across 6 days, and I the format of the race is something I was quite familiar with. It's very much like the Marathon des Sables, where you are running day on day. You're survive everything you need to survive. You're carrying on your back, apart from water, which is provided. But you're running for a length of time. You then have to stop, put up a tent, and in this case, I didn't have a tent. I had a hammock, and then run again the
Wow.
next day, and just do that for a few days in a row. And that one, on paper, didn't look too bad, but the reality of that particular event was just, I can only really describe it as horrendous, mainly because the terrain was so incredibly tough. It was not impassable, but it was incredibly hard going. It was a lot of elevation, a lot of mud, and a lot of very thick jungle. The paths weren't really there. They were sort of slightly hacked through with a machete. Somebody was going ahead hacking these paths. So it was just an incredibly tough race, had a lot of river crossings. But I really did exacerbate how difficult it was by just not being prepared for it at all in a way which I should have been. I hadn't really put the right sort of training in, because I didn't quite know what the right sort of training was. My whole race admin, I like to call it, was incredibly poor. I didn't really know how to put a hammock up, which was painful by about day 2. And everything got wet. I didn't realize how soggy things were going to get. So I sort of, my sleeping bag got wet on day 1, and I had to sort of sleep in a wet sleeping bag for 6 days. So that was a particularly tough one. And then another race, just by complete contrast, was I really, really enjoyed this race, but it was probably one of the most painful things I've done in my life. And it's a race called Badwater 135, which is actually happening right now as we speak. And that takes place in Death Valley in America, the hottest place on earth at the hottest time of the year, deliberately done like that. And you start off in a place called Badwater Basin, which is the lowest point in contiguous USA. It's the lowest point you can go. It's something like 580 meters below sea level. And then you run through the desert, and then you end up at the highest point in America that you can go without a climbing license, which is Mount Whitney. And that race is 135 miles, but it's non-stop. So you just have to keep going, keep going, keep going. And that one is very much a test of survival, because it's an incredibly dangerous environment. It's incredibly dangerous to run in temperatures which are over 50 degrees Celsius. So, but that one I really wanted to be there, so I felt good in my heart. It just really hurt. Whereas the other one, I just felt terrible all over.
And Julie, I know you kind of set yourself challenges, like physical challenges, don't you? You have a bit of a sort of a yearly reset where you kind of do stuff with. Have you ever thought about doing anything like this?
It's really interesting. I do set myself challenges, nothing like what Susie would get involved with. I guess I've listened to your book, Susie, actually, just recently, and really interestingly, I said to someone the other day, I started thinking, like, maybe I should do something a bit more adventurous. Like, I did do a triathlon when my eldest was about 18 months old, and I thought, this will be quite good. But no, we've got our own home gym, and actually we do have Peloton and all the rest of it. And I'm very much a committed Peloton member of the community, let's say. I'll always tell everyone, you won't hear anything bad from me, but so I have started to think about, maybe when the kids are a bit older. And I think for me, that was one of the things that I was really in awe of, Susie, actually, was when I listened to your story, the fact that you had a young child, and you at the time at which you sort of started to really get into running, whereas I've kind of done it the other way around. I was very much in a swimmer when I was young, and I didn't have other responsibilities and commitments and things, and that's really what I struggle with, I guess, when moving into adulthood and having care and responsibilities, children to look after, and finding that time to kind of carve out for yourself. So I'd be really interested to kind of maybe hear a little bit about how you kind of managed to balance that.
It was so hard, but before I talk about that, I do want to say, actually, whenever people ask me about difficult races or events, I obviously just talk about my running life. But what I will say, the only race which really brought me to tears was, and I'm not a crier. I'm like hardcore in my head. I don't cry. I cry about once every 3 years. I'm honestly, the only race which brought me to tears was a swimming race. Just to race. I'm really not naturally gifted at swimming, and I did an Ironman one year. And Julie, I swear to God, I had I had to learn to swim. Didn't really swim, and I was experiencing proper fight or flight every time I went into open water, and I kept on trying and just panicking and coming back out again, and I chipped away at it, and then I did a 5K swim, and I thought, if I don't do this swim, I'll never do this Ironman. And I got in the water and started crying, which I've never done in my life. And it was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. I think I was last. Anyway, it was just so, it just I think what I'm sort of saying, it's sort of horses for courses, isn't it? Like I'm doing what you do in a pool, forget it. Horrendous torture. I would literally rather not. I'd rather retire than have to attempt anything like that. So it's very interesting what some people can do if that's their thing and what people can't do. It was probably one of the toughest things I've done in my life. I did about 2 or 3 swim races, and I think I was last in all of them.
And it was listening to that journey though around the Ironman. I thought maybe I should do an Ironman. Like, it is crazy when you hear what other people do though, and then I'm like, no, I don't like running.
I don't like cycling or swimming, and I did an Ironman, so I could only do one of the 3. So I think you'll be fine. When going back to your question about it was incredibly hard. Have you ever done something where it's only when you reflect you think, how did I do that? In a really difficult time in your life, or maybe a time where you were extremely busy with work and you were just sort of firefighting. It was a bit like that. I was just squeezing it in everywhere I could in my lunch break. Rather than commute to work by transport, I'd get off early and run, wake up a little bit early. A lot of very early morning runs. It was just exhausting. And then coming back, and you still have to get the dinner on and go to the shop and buy the cat food or whatever it is you need to do. You still have to do those things. So it was very, very difficult to be to get very long runs in, I would say. So I was breaking things down, and actually it worked quite well as training. I'll be doing sort of 3 miles here, 3 miles here, 3 miles here in a day. That's still 9 miles. And then some days I'll be able to get another extra couple of miles on either side. So I was running a half marathon. So it was all about just fitting it in. I missed a lot of lunch breaks just running. Probably took slightly longer lunch breaks. I had a big race coming up. It was an awful lot of that, a lot of commuting by my own sort of power.
What was it that kind of started you off with this then? Because you said you weren't always a runner, were you?
Oh, me? No, goodness me, no. I had no premonition that this would happen. It was never within me. I can really vividly remember one morning, really hungover, just watching London Marathon. It was just on TV, and being like, "Huh? What are they doing? And how on earth do you run 26 miles?" And trying to work out how far that was. I didn't really ever see myself as that sort of person. It seemed so alien to the person that I was. And there was somebody that I worked at the time that did actually do it. I can remember being absolutely fascinated, like, how on earth do you run that far? And at that time, never thinking I'd love to do it, just thinking that's like such a hard thing to wrap my head around. And it came about because my younger brother was running a marathon. He wanted to just tick one off as his bucket list. He was to do one marathon, one and done. And he signed up for a marathon, and then as part of his training, he signed up for a half marathon, which was very local to me, and just talked me into it. Said, come with me. And I was very unfit. I was quite a heavy smoker. I'd like to drink wine, just sit there in the evening, because I couldn't really go out. I was a single mum, so I was just sort of just sitting there watching, terrible TV. And he's like, come on, let's do it. I can do it. And to be honestly, he was starting from nothing as well. So I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this. And started running in my lunch hour. And I can vividly remember the first time I tried to run. I tried to run around a football pitch in Guildford, and it was awful. I just couldn't do it. I just kept having to stop. I couldn't do the whole, I don't know, how far is that? It's like less than a kilometre. It's like half a mile. Couldn't do it. And that's really started because I had this goal, and because my brother was nagging me, I carried on doing it. And running's tough at the start. It's really, really hard because it's just not easy. It's never easy. And to be honest with you, all these years later, depending on how you run, it's still not easy. It's still a physical exertion. And I just ran for a little bit longer. I didn't have a watch, any of the sort of stuff that we have now. I was just running for 10 minutes, then 15 minutes and 20 minutes, just building up that way. And found myself on the start line of this half marathon, absolutely, utterly terrified, looking at everybody else. This is so intimidating.
You said in your book, didn't you? You said in your book that you were kind of at the start line of the half marathon, just hungover, like not really feeling it at all. Like,
no.
what was it that made you, like, because you said, you kind of just wanted to just get back in the car and not do it. Like, what was the thing that you thought, no, actually, I am going to start this half marathon. I am going to finish it.
I didn't really have a chance to, because I think left to my own devices, I probably would have just gone home. But I was with my, honestly, terrifying. I just would have been like, no, thank you, and just gone. And then that would have been that, and I wouldn't be sitting here. I was with my brother, and we were slightly late, so we didn't really have a lot of time. I think if I'd been early and on time, so we had like sort of 9 minutes, so put your bib on, and then it's like, go over here. And it was more like, what is happening? And we just went. And so I didn't really think about it too much. And I don't know whether that strategy, or whether that has turned into a strategy, because for a lot of the races I do, I try and not dwell on it prior to it happening. It just happens. It just happens.
Right.
And so, but it's silly to be intimidated. I can understand why I would be scared, and why people, when they're new to running, do find these situations intimidating. But you're still just running. It just happens to be a race. And what's the worst that can happen? You sort of slow down and have a walk. It's not actually that complex. So, I ran the race and finished, and could not believe I'd run 13 miles. I genuinely was so happy with myself, and that really was the start of it. I thought, well, I can run a 10K now, and I can run another half marathon. And then before I knew it, within just over a year, I think it took me to get from there to ultramarathons, which was an escalation. I'll admit that. Yeah.
Just a slight escalation. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the 80% Mental podcast. I'm here with Susie Chan and Dr. Julie Johnston, and we are talking about endurance running, ultra marathons, big adventures, and kind of some of the psychology underpinning some of that stuff. Let's talk about, like, you've just been talking about the pre-race period and kind of getting yourself up for these sorts of things. Let's talk a little bit about that, and I want to bring Julie in here again as well. What are the kinds of things that are going through your mind before some of these events? What's kind of some of the things that you're saying to yourself, and how does that maybe impact on the way that you then perform?
It depends. That's changed over the years. I'll be really honest with you. So I'll go back to probably the earlier races. The biggest race I did, but the biggest race I did in that point in my life, which was the Marathon des Sables, that very first one back in 2013. I hadn't really done a lot. Wasn't very experienced before I stood on that start line, but what I had done was managed to fit in what I thought at the time on reflection was enough training. And I can remember seeing pictures of it and knowing what it looked like through a screen or in a magazine. And it's a bit like going somewhere like to New York to the first time. You know what it looks like, but when you're there, you're like, okay, this is it. And so I'd seen all these pictures. I'd done as much homework as I could. I'd been running around Surrey trails with my rucksack on, and then when I stood there was having had months of nerves, there was very much a sense of calm, and that I'm supposed to be here, and this is where I'm meant to be, and this is what I need to be doing today. And it served me very well. There was nothing more I could have done up until that point. And so I normally have that frame of mind going into a race. It's not that complicated. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and just stay moving. It's really no different to a training one. It just happens to be race day. So I can be quite calm in my head before a race. The shorter and the faster, anything which is very much pace driven, I do get nervous on, because those races are very black and white. So marathons, sort of quite a fast running race, which I don't do anymore, like 10Ks. don't do them so much anymore, not so fast. I would get nervous at those because, there's nowhere to hide. You either do it or you don't do it. Whereas at ultra marathons, you have a lot more space to make mistakes, to recover from mistakes, to take in your surroundings, to walk, to experience it more, to be in it a bit more. So that takes a lot of pressure off, which you get in, I would say, normal races. But I don't stand on a start line. I rarely stand on a start line saying I am not going to do this. I stand there saying this is what's going to happen for the next few hours, and this is where I'm meant to be. And then I just go. And I genuinely try not to think about it too much, because that's not going to change anything.
I think that's really interesting because, I think there's a couple of things that comes off the back of that, but really your focus on standing on that start line and sort of having that, what some people might suggest as positivity. And when we talk about self-talk a lot of the time, people talk about positive self-talk versus negative self-talk. And in the literature, that's what we hear a lot about. But actually, in a lot of the work that I do, so I work with a lot of young swimmers in particular, and also listening to you and through your book and the narrative that you've kind of developed. I think one of the things that I kind of focus on very much is trying to focus on things that are helpful as opposed to things that are unhelpful. And when you start to kind of categorize it in that way, I find that it's a lot easier for people to understand and to kind of and to get the hang of. I had a young athlete who was a 12-year-old before Christmas told me, my mum always tells me, you can do this, to think positively and, all that kind of stuff. She goes, but I just feel like I'm gaslighting myself. And for me, it was a brilliant kind of like, I laughed when she said it. I just loved the way she described it in that way. And I was like, okay, yeah. So let's talk about this a bit more and kind of unpick it. And really, when I started to sort of say, it's not about pretending that you feel okay. And I guess with yourself, Susie, like with the ultramarathons, you wake up, probably much before the end of day one, but let's say you wake up on day two, your legs are heavy, you're tired, you're kind of probably thinking, how the hell am I going to get through another day of this? If you dwell on that too long, like you said, you try not to. By turning around and going, okay, my legs aren't heavy, let's think about this positively, let's have a positive mindset, that would feel like you're not going to believe that's not going to work, because ultimately you are tired, you are feeling the effects of kind of running however many miles you did the day before. But I suspect, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, because I've not done an ultramarathon, but I suspect, and listening to what you've said, it's more about focusing on, okay, well, what do I need to do to get through today? Like what, and at the end of the day, what rest, what recovery, what do I need to eat? All of that kind of preparation. Would that be fair to kind of say? So it's really thinking about the strategies that you can put in place around and kind of focusing your attention and your thoughts and your mind on those, as opposed to that kind of positive versus negative. Would that be fair to say?
I'm quite vague. I try and keep everything a little bit vague if I think about the bigger picture. But when you say it's nuanced, in a way I do. I'll be really focused on like, right, okay, in 9 minutes, make sure you take a salt tab. So I'm thinking very much within the moment, and I break things down sort of point to point. If I start to think about the whole thing, I can get into spiral's probably a bit strong. It can seem quite overwhelming, and then things can turn a little bit negative. So I have spent a lot of time over the years trying to keep my sort of train of thought on the right lines. And so it'll be like, what's the next checkpoint have? Oh, when was the last time you ate? Oh, isn't that a lovely view? So just being very much in the now, rather than thinking probably any more than the next hour. And that really helps distract me from the bigger picture. I remember the first time I did a 100-mile race, and you're supposed to like know where you're going and look at the course. And I opened up the map and it was like 100 miles. I shut it immediately. I thought, no, I can't look at that. It was ridiculous. It was like across the UK, and it was the whole of the south of England, and it was like this line through it. I thought, I can't look at that. And so I just looked at where the next aid station was, and that's the only way I could tackle it mentally. So think about something in its entirety when it's a very long ways for me it's intimidating, it's daunting, and it can really put me on the wrong track. So I'm very much in the moment, in the next hour, and that's it. And then often I will use different techniques to help break that down, because sometimes you can start thinking like that. So you can be it's normally the first third or quarter of a long race. You don't want it to be like, 75 miles to go. You just don't think about it. Yeah.
What are some of those techniques then that you mentioned that you used to do that?
It's so hard, because I have said to people over time, just try and stay positive and think about these things. And it's an easy instruction, but it's actually very hard to do if it's
easier said than done. Yeah.
So some days, some races I've had it where I've just been absolutely fine and not really worried about it too much. And that's often when I will be very good at I call it keeping distracted, thinking about anything other than the fact I'm running. And sometimes that can help when you're running with somebody. You've got somebody there, you're chatting, and the next thing you know, it's, you've been doing that for like an hour, and you've ticked up another X number of miles. I just have a lot of different techniques I use. I will go through I'll ask myself questions and then answer them at great length in my head. Think about something which what do I need to do next? What do I need to do here? Really, really dwell on minor thoughts. I've got incredibly bored of my internal monologue. Just think about anything other than the fact that I'm running and I've got a long way to go. And it's easier said than done. It's a lot easier said than done, because sometimes your knee might start hurting, and then you don't think about your knee. It's normal pain. This is normal. 80 miles, so it's very, very difficult. And then I have definitely had some races where I have been obsessed with the tiny soreness in my shin or whatever it is, or the fact that I feel incredibly tired. I don't know if I can do this. I've had all of those moments. Everybody has, and it's maintaining the mental strength in those moments which has been the toughest. I've definitely had points where I've thought I should stop or I can't do this. I'm not strong enough for this, and those are the toughest. But on reflection, those are the races which are the most rewarding. They're the biggest afterglow, regardless of how I've done. I've finished 3 hours slower than I thought I would, but I still finished having had that very tough moment. And those ones are the most rewarding of the races, I would say.
Julie, from a psychologist point of view, like what are we talking about here? Because we're talking about these sort of associative and disassociative strategies, aren't we, for sort of focusing on like what's going on in the body, but then also like switching to completely distracting myself and thinking about something totally different. So again, like what's happening there? What are some of the ways that athletes can maybe do that? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultramarathon, the endurance events really offer like a really unique perspective in that, because, the need to be doing that over that long period of time, when with the athletes that I would work with who are doing like, one-off races and then have sort of some downtime and then have to maybe come back for a semi-final or final, it's a little bit different. But I guess the techniques are quite similar. We would talk about those, distraction techniques, disassociation in between. So, reading books, talking to friends, like things like that, for example, actually normalizing that and making people aware that actually that can be quite helpful at the right time and in the right moment. Because I think a lot of young athletes in particular will see, their idols, let's say, their role models coming out on a Olympic Games, let's say, and they'll see them really focused, and they'll see them like, seem to be really kind of thinking about something in relation to the race. But of course, you don't know what's going on in someone's head. And I think it's really important to kind of break down some of that and really get them to think about, okay, well, they're not going to be focused on the race like 100% of the time. Like, you can't wake up at 6 a.m. and start to prepare for your race if you're not racing till midday, for example. And I think that kind of taps into what Susie's saying as well, in terms of that, if I think too far ahead, then that's going to just tip me over the edge. And it's a bit similar to that. I'll often say to athletes as well that, and again, sometimes they'll think in the week, I've got a competition this weekend, I should be focusing and I should be thinking about it now. And I'll say, okay, if in the maybe last 10 meters, and I'm talking about, sprint kind of events compared to what Susie's doing. But if in the last 10, 20 meters, you're finding that you're really hitting a wall and struggling to kind of finish, it might be, you know, physiologically you've done all the training, like your coach is saying, there's no real kind of physiological reason. It might be that actually you've just started that low level kind of stress response at too soon for you, and therefore you've wasted a bit of nervous energy. And by the time you get to the race, without really realizing it, you've fatigued yourself, you know, in some level, to enough to kind of matter. And so trying to really use those disassociation techniques and distraction techniques for me is, with the athletes I work with, is really, really important. But then also exactly what Susie said, you know, thinking about the strategies, the kind of, right, what do I need to do right now? Take that salt tablet now. Having a really clear kind of pre-race routine that starts for each athlete at a time that's suitable for them. Because again, every athlete will kind of, as Susie's mentioned, she'd rather just rock up and get going and not think too much about it. Other athletes kind of need a little bit more time to kind of get their heads in the game. And again, I do completely think that the longer the distance, the less prep time you need, so to speak, because you've got all that time in the race to kind of, you know, to occupy yourself. But for those sprint events, which is what I would have done, any little error that you make is going to have a, you know, kind of quite a significant impact. So you need a little bit more time to really think through the race and make sure you're going to execute all those different skills and strategies effectively. So yeah, for me, I think a lot of what Susie's saying kind of reinforces the things that I would expect to kind of hear. So I think, and again, you mentioned, I think Susie at the start, around listening to Pete, I think a few weeks ago at Cheltenham, that it reinforced that some of the stuff you were doing was kind of the right things to do. And I often think as well, that's that can be as important as hearing new information, can't it? It can be really useful to just go, oh, I do that, and okay, that's what I'm meant to be doing. Okay, good.
I found out there was some actual scientific terminology for some of the things I'm already doing, which was interesting. Oh, that's I didn't know there was a name for that. I think actually is interesting, and this has only occurred to me just now. Some of the events and things you're talking about, they're very high pressure because small mistakes sort of play out. And in an ultramarathon, in a longer race, you have got time. You can actually recover from something which you've eaten badly, whatever. You do actually have a little bit of space and time to recover. And then, from what I was saying earlier, is that I get very nervous and stressed when it's like a 5K, a 10K, because that is very performance based, and I'm not great in that space. And my head is always, you know, and my friends are like, will you calm down? It's just park run. And I'm just like, oh, I don't really. And so it's very interesting in that I don't respond very well to that pressure. Whereas in an ultramarathon space, like I feel a lot less pressure. I mean, I'm reasonably well known, but I mean, I'm very much a middle packer. Like people pass me and I'm like completely like, well done. It doesn't bother me being in that space at that speed. I'm just there to finish it for myself. So that pressure is taken off, which is maybe why I can do the disassociation and just sort of walk up and not have to think about it too much, because I don't really worry too much about my performance in terms of, you know, being super fast or being at one of the elites, which is, I think, a very different headspace to be in whatever the event is. I am lucky enough to not be that talented and not to have to deal with that side of things. So it's that's never really occurred to me that I don't have that sort of level of pressure. And when I do feel it, when, you know, we can put pressure on ourselves. And I used to, when I did start running, put pressure on. I need to be at the finish by this certain time. And in ultramarathons, nothing's guaranteed. There's so many variables: the weather, you know, what the terrain is like, you know, the hills. You can't really level pace a lot of these sorts of races. So yeah, I sort of take the pressure off like that. And then another thing I realise I now do in not putting too much pressure on, there's certain things that I'm just not good at. I'm not very good. I'm terrible at heights. I don't really like being in the mountains, and quite a few famous races are in the mountains. I just don't do those ones. I just do the ones which I like. Why would? And so I'm sort of as comfortable as I can be in a space which makes me very uncomfortable. If that makes sense, that's my sort of sweet spot.
Yeah. Can I jump in? I was going to say, so it's interesting because listening to you, and again, what struck me, and it's something that I struggle with, I guess, most when I'm working with athletes, is helping those who are having a bit of a crisis of confidence. And kind of really trying to rebuild some of that confidence. And confidence to me is something that ebbs and flows, right, over time. And I guess, again, going back to that kind of one-off, higher pressure race, if they've had a couple of races where they've not performed so well for various reasons, then the confidence dips, and trying to build that back up is quite tricky. And listening to you, I guess there's some, you're drawing on a few things there about being in your comfort zone and choosing the things that you enjoy, I guess, which maybe feed that confidence. But are there other kind of strategies that you have? I mean, you just strike me as such a confident individual. You're able to approach these real endurance events. And
I think it's because I've been doing it a long time now. I definitely had at least, I went through a 2-year period at least where my confidence, I hated running. I wasn't enjoying it because I just wasn't where I should have been, or thought I should have been. I was actually where I should have been. I just wasn't where I thought I should have been. And it was very much driven by pace. I was doing quite well. There were mainly because there weren't many women out doing these sorts of events. And actually I was on quite a good trajectory. And then I just plateaued. And that just happens in sport. You can only be, you can't keep just getting better and better. And I plateaued, and I really struggled when that happened to me. I was probably overtraining a little bit. I was doing lots and lots and lots of races because I was really enjoying it, and I was sort of doing quite well. And then I just sort of stagnated. And then loads of really talented runners came into the scene. The ultra scene sort of got bigger and bigger. And I definitely spent the best part of a year like, oh, I'm so rubbish at this. This is really hard. I don't know if I want like running anymore. And that was tough. And it took me quite a lot of self-talk. And a lot of learning just to, and this is probably where the dissociation maybe came in a bit. Like, it's not, no one cares that much about me and my 10K time. Like, it's not that important. I'm not like going to the Olympics. I'm there just at my local race. It's fine. And just to relearn what I loved about the thing that I loved doing, which was running, and all of the things I was focusing on are the things which were a little bit more joyless about running. Missing the pace and hitting those tempo runs. They're quite tough, and if you miss them, I was really dwelling on it, and there was just no need to dwell on it. And I went through about 3 months really, really thinking, oh, that's that. I don't want to run anymore, but still running, to just stopping and just going back to all the things which I really enjoyed about running, which was running with my friends, running in the trails, having no pressure events. So I started to enter races and just run the whole thing with my friends. And I fell back in love with running again. And then, of course, my performance actually improved a little bit because I was less in my own head. So definitely had those really hard moments where I learned a lot in that 12-month period, and then came out the other side just with the new things to help to arm myself with. It doesn't matter. People don't care. They're thinking about themselves, not thinking about you, Susie. And that's just really helped. Again, maybe it's just another way of just that pressure coming off. And then I went through a phase where I wasn't well. I had cancer, and I didn't know. And I was just like, my performance just sort of dropped off a cliff, and I was really struggling, and I didn't really know why. And then I had that reason, and it was like, oh, okay, that's another reason. So I just would reframe what it is gave me the happiness again. And then I had an injury which lasted quite a few months. So I've been through all the various things that can happen as a runner, and in each one of those times, which was particularly challenging, I reframed what it is I was working towards. So when I was unwell, I reframed the goal. I was like, I just want to get to the start line of that race, and if I have to walk the whole thing, I'm going to walk the whole thing, and that was my goal. And yeah, just reframing what I cared about running. So and then when I was injured, it was just like, well, you can't run more than 3 miles for however months it was quite a few months. Just go down track, try and get your 400-meter time down. So just giving myself little breadcrumb goals which were actually achievable in that time I was in.
Talking about some of those sort of tougher times, you mentioned earlier that the races that you've kind of really got something out of were the ones where it had been quite tough, or there was kind of some sort of adversity, and kind of really sort of coming through that. I want to talk a little bit about that, those times when your head's not really been in it, right? You kind of about to start a race, or you're about to start some sort of challenge. Your head's just not quite there. And I'm thinking particularly about this, your treadmill world record, right? Running on a treadmill for 12 hours with a wall that's like two meters in front of you. So you're basically just staring at a wall. And what do you want? Was it 68 and a half miles, something like that, in 12 hours?
I should know this, shouldn't I? This
I think.
I don't know this. It's downstairs in the loo, and I've got the plaque. I should go and have a look.
But I remember in the book, you said that you just, sometimes you just get those races where you just start and you're like, I'm not. This isn't going to be fun. Like, tell me a little bit about that. About the treadmill world record, and then kind of like how you get yourself through that sort of initial, I'm not feeling this today.
That was very unique. That was the first time that ever happened to me. I've had it in training runs all the time. When it's sort of raining outside and you're tired and you're sort of you just I procrastinate a lot sometimes when it's like that and I'm just not feeling it, and then I'll get out and do it, and I'll always be glad I've done it. But you just get some days, and I'd only really had it ever in training by this point, where I'm either in the race and it's happening, and I just very focused, laser focused on the finish line. I don't think about anything else. Or in a run, I've been like, I'm just struggling today. And then you just go slower, cut your run short, whatever. It is what it is. You just do the thing and then you're done. But that was a different experience because it wasn't a race. It wasn't an event. Everything was very hyper focused on me. So I did feel that pressure. It was very black and white. So all of those things I imagine played into it. Somehow I tried to keep it as low key as possible. And somehow it got out that I was doing it. And then all these people were showing up. It's just huge pressure. And I think all of those things, on reflection, I just started running and I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't care. I don't care about the world record. But it was too late. A lot of time and energy had gone into setting this thing up. To satisfy Guinness, we had they sent us a 23-page document of all the rules and regulations, including it had to be open to the public. The treadmill had to be calibrated. I had to have all these independent witnesses. It was a very complex thing to set up. And the person who I've been working with for years is Dr. Chris Howe. He's a sports scientist in Kingston University then. And so he recruited all these students. They were going to make it a great big project. It just turned into this huge thing. And I turned up and stood on the treadmill and I was like, I don't know about this at all. I'd lost quite a bit of fitness in that time because I was training for an Ironman. So I was super fit when I did the sort of trial run, which probably would have been the best day to break the world record. And so I wasn't quite as fit as I was previously, which turned out to be the shape of my life. I didn't know that at the time. You never know you're as fit as you are in the moment. It was just, I just had to do it. I mean, I didn't really have any options by that point. I felt I had no other option than to give it my best. And it was mental torture for 12 hours. It was absolutely torturous. I threw everything at it within my head, within my mental armory to stay in the moment and to keep pushing. I tried absolutely everything, and all those things worked for a period of time. And then I was just misery. It was absolute misery. I was so into it. Was the longest amount of turmoil I've had to go through in my head. Physically, actually, I wasn't too bad, but when your head isn't in it, it's so much harder. You'd rather run with a pain than have your head not in it, because it was turmoil. It was absolute turmoil. And I just kept going. And I think the video is out this summer because we had to live stream the whole thing as well. So it's on very deep YouTube somewhere. And you just all you got to do is just look at me. I'm not having fun. And then these people kept coming, going, "Yay!" holding up like signs, and I was like, and then after a while, and I'm not like this. I'm quite a chatty person. I was like, "Can you let no one near me? Because I can't." It was just more energy to try and pretend I was on track whilst having to do the work. It was excruciating. I did break the world record, and it was so tough. And then it sort of, when I ended up on like breakfast TV or whatever it was, and then subsequently, because it got picked up by a lot of things, because I was trending, somebody saw it and thought that is incredibly easily beatable, and then beat me. After to her, because I would not do that again, because as I mentioned, I'm not the fastest. It was a record which not many people have had a go at, because one,
Yeah.
it's difficult to set up, and two, it is absolutely disgusting to try and do that, and it really was tough. So if you think you can run faster than me on a treadmill for 12 hours, go get that record.
Julie, have you ever had that, you know, when you were competing, maybe like those days when you just like, yeah, no, I'm not feeling it today?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that's a really familiar feeling. Again, the difference for me was I was diving in and swimming 50 meters, so I had 25 seconds to get through, as opposed to 12 hours. And I think that for me is, so I completely, you know, and even for me, like the longest event I would have done was maybe like 200 meters or something, you know, like just over 2 minutes worth of kind of time in the water. So yeah, I think I can completely relate to what you're saying in terms of that feeling of dread as you dive in, and you're like, and it always comes at the worst possible moment, you know, when for me it would have been, again, probably one of my worst actual times I choked in performance was Commonwealth Games in 2006 in Melbourne. So it was my third Commonwealth Games, which you would think by that point I've had a little bit of I know how this goes, and it, you know, I know what I'm doing. The difference was that it was in Australia. It was, swimming's huge in Australia. It was in a pool where the pool in Melbourne had like 3 sides were surrounded by people, and it was a sellout. It was heats, but it was sold out. So you had something like, I don't know, 8,000 people or something in quite a small enclosed space. So the noise was pretty intense, and it's just all those things combined. And I was like, I was on blocks and I was just shaking, and I was like, what the hell? Because that's never ever happened to me before, and that was towards the end of my career. So I was like, as I said, that was in 2006, and I've been competing internationally since 1998. So I was like, what the heck's going on here? Like, and I think that when that happens in that moment, it is very difficult, especially if you've not had to deal with that before. Like, I mean, the whole feelings of dread and not feeling great. Yeah, we've all had that. But when it happens, when there's all the pressure on, when, you know, and you just have to go out, got to give this my best shot and see what happens. And I remember diving into the water, and I just felt, it's a weird thing to say, but I felt really light, which sounds good in swimming, and to some ways it is, but too light. Like I didn't have a feel of the water at all. I felt like I was just slipping through the water, and it was a terrible swim. And then I got out, and the media guys are really lovely, because then they go, oh, how do you feel about that? Could possibly be the last time you swim at the Commonwealth Games, because I know you're thinking about retiring. I was like, yeah. Went to the toilets and started crying, you know, but they just, you know, that's part of it. And so it's a great learning experience, and it's a great story to share. But I think it's important to acknowledge that it happens sometimes, you know, these things happen.
It's sport. It doesn't matter what the sport is. I mean, the thing about sport is you can't be the best all the time, because nobody can be. And I think I think there's like I say about running, like maybe, I don't know, 60% of the runs you do are just kind of fine. You're just running, and 20% are going to be not great, but 20% are going to be brilliant, and you feel great, and you feel in the moment, and it's just enough of a percentage for it to be keep you coming back. Just what you were saying about sort of doing sort of 50 meters to 200 meters compared to what I do, it couldn't really be further apart. It's in the mentality, because those sorts of events, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's all about your mindset before you've even done anything. You have to be so prepared, and all of the work pretty much is in the all of that time before. Whereas in ultra running, you can do a bit of training, whatever, but it's all about in the event itself. So it's completely the other, it's the absolute obverse of what ultra running is, where for me anyway, where I've got all that time to think in the race, and I try not to think about it before. Whereas with the sport you do, it's all in the preparation, and then you dive in the water, and then what will be.
Yeah, you're trying to shut off those thoughts actually when you get in the water. Absolutely. I think what's interesting though is for me, when we come down to psychology and mental skills, like a lot of the skills you use are the same across, you know, we just apply them differently. So they're the same skills, but they're just applied differently at different points in slightly different ways. But, you know, from a psych point of view, you know, you've got your self-talk, your cognitive reframing, you've got your, relaxation, maybe you deep breathing, your relaxation, a little bit of imagery, for different purposes. And so I guess you're using perhaps those same skills, but just applying them slightly differently. And I guess that's where the craft comes in some ways from the mental kind of perspective. The other thing I was going to say though is, and both listening to your book and listening to you talk now, you talk a lot about the friends and the support and the crew that you have around you. And I really wanted to kind of touch a little bit on that, because I think that's got a lot, that says a lot, I think, about the importance of, even in an individual sport such as, ultra running is, swimming is, etc., like the importance of that support network around you.
Yeah, it's crucial for me. I think it's the thing which is very special about ultra running. You can be, actually, even about running, you can just be on the start line of a race or be running, and immediately you've got somebody to talk to, or you've got something in common. And for ultra running in particular, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been, I don't know how many miles into a race, and then you come across somebody and you want that distraction or a bit of connection. And depending on what their race is doing, because some people just very much like to be by themselves in these moments, I don't mind having a conversation. And I've just made instant friends with somebody, both exhausted, in the middle of a race. There's nothing we haven't shared across the next 10 miles or whatever it is, we're running together, and then you don't see them again. It's very much at the heart of what I enjoy about ultra running. It's the community. They are a little bit annoying in that they're very, very enabling, and there's always somebody doing something way more hardcore than you. You're doing a race, they're going to go and run back at the end. They're going to run back to the start. There's always somebody doing something, even more ridiculous. And they do, as a community, they do normalize things in a way which isn't normal. I realized this just before I joined Peloton. I'm sort of in this world where it'd be like, do you want to go and run 30 miles on Saturday? I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go run 30 miles on Saturday. That's not normal. It's normal for me and my friends to do that sort of thing, but it's not actually very normal. And then I joined Peloton, and it really brought me back to that person trying to run around that football field for the first time. And nobody, I say this in my classes, nobody's ever born running a mile. We all have to go through that journey. And it's just a really, really welcoming space when you stand on the start line of an ultramarathon. There's no particular type, demographic. It's a lot of people from different jobs, different walks of life, all just wanting to run a very long way for their weekend. For me, it's the thing that very much keeps me going, and I often rely on what's called a pacer. And this has been a thing which gets me through some of my toughest races. And that's somebody that can come and join you. Not all races have this. Normally, typically 100-miler, the long races will have them. Multi-stage ultras don't tend to have them. Anything from 50 miles down tends not to have them. But if I'm in my longer race, I'll have something called a pacer, and I'm running along thinking, oh, this is actually really quite hard. Then I can turn it around by knowing somebody's basically going to come at 11 o'clock at night and run. They've given up their Saturday night to run through some fields in the middle of the UK for me, and that I find that very motivating. Like, okay, you can't wimp out. They've rearranged the whole weekend around you. They're going to lose a night's sleep. So for me, that kind of helps. So I use pacers a lot. I'm yet to do 100-miler without a pacer or somebody there for me. I think I could do it, but I think I would probably be in a little bit more mental tone while I'll be back on that treadmill for 12 hours. I'll be in the same space. I do rely heavily on the community to help get me through these events, and I would certainly say that without them, I wouldn't have done a lot of the things that I've done.
This is the 80% Mental podcast. I'm here with Susie Chan and Dr. Julie Johnston, and we've been talking about the psychology underpinning endurance and endurance events. If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, don't forget you can find all of our other episodes on the website, 80percentmental.com, where you can subscribe as well, leave a comment, or you can find us on Twitter at EPM Podcast or on Instagram at 80percentmental. Susie, this is the point in the podcast. We've got to kind of know you as an ultra runner, right? We've kind of got to know some of your sort of psychological techniques and skills. But I like to get to know our guests as people as well, right? Because we're athletes, but also people. So I've got a little game that I like to play with my guests, which is just a sort of series of quick fire questions on a topic. I have to ask for consent. First of all, are you up for playing our little game?
Always. I can't guarantee what's going to come out my mouth over the quick fire. It will. You'll get the real me. I'm not very good at redacting any thoughts in this.
That's right. That's what we want. We want the real you. We want the athlete, but the person as well. Okay, so how this works is I've got 4 virtual envelopes.
Oh no!
Envelopes. I don't know. And there's a different category of questions in each. So we've got this or that, favorites and firsts, hypotheticals, or perspectives. All right. So I'm going to ask you to choose a number between 1 and 4,
Okay.
and then we'll see which questions you get.
Let's go number 1.
Number 1. Okay. So number one is favorites and firsts.
Okay.
Okay. So Julie, I'm going to bring you in to play as well.
Okay.
So quick fire questions ish. All right. What's the first one? Okay. What's the first thing that you remember wanting to be when you were a kid growing up?
Me?
Yeah.
Museum curator. I remember seeing it on a TV program from a million years ago called Dempsey and Makepeace. And Makepeace.
Oh, I remember that.
Makepeace was a museum. I know, what a throwback. She was a museum curator in an episode, and I was like, I want to work in museums, and that's all I wanted to do for the entirety of my childhood. And before I became a runner, for 20 years, I worked in museums and galleries.
Wow. Well, I mean, first of all, that's awesome. And second of all, I was not expecting a Dempsey and Makepeace throwback this morning.
Only people
So thanks for
age
that.
will go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, everybody else, anybody I'm thinking about 4, 3 won't have a clue what we're talking about.
Julie, what about you? What's the first thing you remember wanting to be?
I remember wanting to be a writer. We used to talk about,
Okay.
I had 2 older brothers, and we used to talk about how one would design the building, one would build the building, and I would write the story. I would sit in the building and write the stories in the building. And actually, we've not strayed too far from that in our careers. One of my brothers is a structural engineer. He's in business. The other kind of does like shop design, you know, kind of for big high street kind of stores. Yeah. And I guess I'm an academic, so we end up writing a lot. Well, try to. I never have time to, but the idea is we do. So yeah, so it's a bit weird, but yeah, there you go.
I like it. All right, next one. Favorite way to spend a rainy day?
I'll go for a run, obviously.
I was going to say.
Roast dinner, walk the dogs. No, I mean, the rain doesn't normally stop play with me. I don't like it, but it's normally a normal day. Nice run and roast dinner.
I've got to be the opposite there. As an ex-swimmer, it's really, really strange. I don't like getting wet. I used to stand at the side of the pool and be like, oh, I don't mind training, but I just don't want to get wet. Because you'd be like in the pool, like you'd be there like 4 hours a day. You'd do a 2-hour session in the morning and 2 hours, and you do that 6 days a week. And you'd be like, oh, I'm fed up my hair being wet. So anyway, for me, in a rainy day, it's hot chocolate, duvet, movie, on the sofa, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Stay dry.
Yeah.
First moment you felt like an adult?
Oh, probably about a year ago when my life together. So I thought you've got your life together now, Susie, because you know what I did? It looked like rain, and I put the patio cushions in. I was like, this is it. I've reached peak organising my life. You know, you look at people who've got their life together, and my airing cupboard's still a mess. You know, but it's these little life things that I don't feel like I've ever had a grip on. Washing's never completely done, but I just thought that is a very mature thing to get your garden ready for winter.
That's impressive. Julie, what about you? First time you felt like a grown-up?
I'm not sure I do feel like a grown-up. I do think that regularly. I've got 2 children, and I think, really? Like, I've got kids. But I guess if I think about it, I moved to Australia in 2008, sold up, packed up everything, and left and went to Australia. And then got a job as a waitress, and felt very proud of myself that I was able to function in a different currency and like operate in, and felt just, had a moment, I think, in a car park going, I've got a bank account in a different country. I can like operate. I can survive in a different country on my own. Yeah. So that's probably the moment I felt like an adult. So it was a while ago, but yeah, day to day, I don't.
Yeah. I remember mine was when I first moved to Sheffield to go to university, and I had to go to Argos to buy a clothes drying rack.
Oh yeah,
and I thought like that's just so
yeah.
boring and grown up. But then I didn't feel like an adult again until about last year when I built a shed. Favorite childhood snack that you still secretly love?
Oh, I don't secretly. It's crisps. It's always crisps. There's nothing I don't know about British crisps and their flavours. Honestly, I've got some I love them. When I actually worked in university for a while, looking after museums there, UCL, and they used to call me two-pack Susie because I used to eat 2 packs of crisps a day. And they had a secret Santa, and they just bought me like £10. This bought me £10 worth of crisps. So
wow. So this might be controversial, but what is the best crisp?
Salt and vinegar. I'm a salt and vinegar straight up. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if it's got a crinkle cut, even more salt and vinegar in the situation. But that's probably my favorite flavour. There's lots out there, very fancy luxury ones. I mean, I will literally try any crisp.
I saw a reel on Instagram where some of the US instructors in Peloton came across and were trying lots of different. Were you involved in that taste test? They were trying lots of different flavours of UK crisps because they don't have so many flavours in the States.
It was when they had like the fish and chips and the curries, and like those all got left. Those crisps, I ate them all. Like nobody wanted them. I was like, give them to me. I'm going to take the chicken tikka flavour home. I'm having it. Yeah.
Susie? What's the favourite thing about yourself that people rarely notice?
Oh God, that's a horrible question. The favourite thing about myself that people rarely notice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't got a quick fire answer to that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a deeper one.
Yeah, it's a bit deep. There's things which people don't realise. I'll give you something which is very light. It wasn't my favourite thing about myself, but I have got a license to drive a forklift truck and build a scaffold tower. And people don't know that. That's from my museum years where we had to do a lot of very practical stuff. So if you need a scaffold tower built, I'm your woman.
Okay. Yeah. No, I might take you up on that. Julie, what about you?
I don't know. I struggle to kind of think about that. Favorite thing about myself? Not really sure at all. Possibly my eyes but people would have noticed that when I was growing up because I've got blue eyes. But beyond that, not really. Yeah. Not really sure.
Fair enough. Well, I'll set you the task of thinking of something for yourself. Think of some favourite things about yourself. Okay, last one then. Favourite way to treat yourself after a long week? I'm assuming it's just a bag of crisps. But...
Bag of crisps? No, I'm going to elevate that bag of crisps. I'm still one of these people that do love a bath. I know there's people out there that don't. Bubble bath, bag of crisps in the bubble bath. Why not? Yeah, lovely. Love a bath.
Julie, can you beat that bag of crisps in a bubble bath?
Not me, not really. Like the bubble bath sounds quite good actually. I'm like, yeah, it's been a while. A nice home cooked meal, glass of wine, time with the family, something quite wholesome, basically for me. Like nothing too adventurous. You can tell I'm middle aged.
Those things sound perfect to me. Perfect, yeah.
Well, I feel like I've gotten to know you both a little bit better. So thank you so much for playing our getting to know you game.
No problem.
Okay, so just a couple of questions left for you then before we kind of wrap things up a little bit. One of the things that I'm really interested in, and actually I have to give a shout out to my friend Greg Hewitt for this question. And it was, you finished the Marathon des Sables four times. What's the mental approach involved in going back to something that you've done before? Right. So the first time it's all shiny and new, you're not sure what to expect. Like you've done it before. So what's that like? Like, talk me through that experience.
It's very hard because there's a couple of races which I just wouldn't go back to, and that's not because I didn't love them. It's because I loved them so much, and I don't want to go back and undo that memory by perhaps, having a slightly worse experience, if that makes sort of want to just hold that there and put like a little sort of ball around it and just leave it. The Marathon des Sables, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I went back because I wanted to. I'm terrible for trying to talk a lot of my friends into doing events and races, because I'm like, you need to experience this. It's so good. It's like going to, let's just go back a few years to like a really great bar or something. Like, you have to come. It's a laugh. It's that sort of same sort of energy where like I just want to share this experience and know. When I see my friends on their running journeys, that like you're gonna absolutely love this, and just trying to make people do something that I know they're going to be good at and I know they're going to love. So when I went back, it was with a couple of friends, and my now husband went back with him because I just wanted him to experience it. He didn't like it. He didn't really enjoy the 6 days in the desert at all. I did. And then the third time they invited me back, and my stupid ego was like, oh, how flattering, I'll go back. And that was actually the toughest one. And there's nothing like having your ego and your arse served back to you on a plate by a race you've done before. It was horrendous. I just completely tanked in that race, which actually ultimately turned out to be a very, very good experience for me in the long run. You have to respect whatever it is you're doing. So there were different reasons for each time. And then the fourth one was actually, I just finished cancer treatment, literally just finished. And I was like, I'm just going to go. And it was actually, and I was there with my best friend, took my husband back to try and make him enjoy it for the second time. And then another friend, a couple of other friends, and we ran the event. And it was one of the most affirming things. By that point, I was comfortable in it. It wasn't mentally challenging because I'd done it 3 times, so that was all dealt with. And in terms of how difficult the race was, I knew what to deal with. So it was joyous as that foot shredding event could be. So different reasons each time, I would say. For ultramarathons, it's either going to be one of two things. I will go back. There's a local race called North Downs Way 50. I go back to that race because I just like the race. And also I'll probably try and put a time on that. Maybe I could be 15 minutes quicker. If I don't, it doesn't matter. That's ultra running. So there are different reasons. But I think probably what is more interesting is that there's a couple which I just want to leave and have as a memory, because I think if I did go back, I wouldn't be able to do it as well. And it was perfect in that moment.
Yeah, it's like that going on holiday to the same place twice, right? It's never as good the second time.
Yeah, so that.
So you're going to kind of hold on to that memory. Julie, what about, so you're like, from a psych point of view, let's say you're sitting down with somebody who's preparing to do their first like ultra event, like multi-day, multi-stage event. Like what are some of the sort of, we've talked about some of this already during this episode, but what are some of the like top psych tips or top bits of advice that you would, tell somebody who's about to do this for the first time?
I mean, I think, we have talked about a lot of this, and listening to what Susie, has sort of said has really reaffirmed some of the advice that I'd possibly give in that situation. I do think trying to keep things in the moment and not think too far ahead is really, really important. And that's definitely something that I would encourage. I guess that kind of goes back, if you think about from psychological theory, about the different types of goals that we might set, outcomes, kind of finishing it, performance, process. So really trying to keep you focused on those kind of process goals, like those in the moment. How am I going to do this? What strategies am I going to use? What do I need to do in the moment to moment? And I think also at the end of each day, again, having that really practical approach in terms of what do I need to do to recover and to look after myself and to prepare for the next day, but also trying not to get too caught up in the things that maybe you think didn't go so well, or like, that you're not too happy about. I often will. And again, for me, it's a similar strategies for those athletes who've got maybe heat, semis and finals. It's about, reflecting, spending some time to reflect, allowing yourself to feel the emotions that you feel in that moment. So not trying to kind of, I think sometimes people feel like, I can't be upset or I can't be overly happy. I have to kind of control my emotions. Well, actually, I kind of think, have a moment where your emotions, just feel them in whatever way they are. And then at some point you've got to kind of go, right, that's enough now. Now I need to kind of get ready for the next event or the next day, or whatever it might be. And some things that I've used with athletes is trying to sort of put it in a little box. You know, some of the thoughts or feelings or emotions is like almost mentally think about packing them away in a little box that you can unpack at a later date if you feel you need to, you know, after the race, a month or two down the line, whatever. And that's worked for some athletes where they feel that, okay, let's pack them away and in my head in a little box, and then let's start the day fresh. And I know there's other athletes will, you know, in an ultramarathon, I suspect this is quite tricky because you've got a very limited amount of equipment, but, you know, new shirt, new day, you know, trying to have like a little physical kind of reminder or reset, something that helps, you know, kind of go, right, we're starting from fresh again today, like whatever happened yesterday happened, whatever happens tomorrow's problem. And really trying to keep your mind in that moment. So for me, and I kind of guess the last thing would be that awareness of self-talk. So being aware of what you are saying to yourself, and how that's making you feel. So is that making you feel, is that helping you, or are you finding that's putting pressure on yourself or making you feel concerned or worried or whatever? And I think it's that awareness sometimes that not everyone has to begin with, and it's really important to kind of just develop that awareness of, make sure you're talking to yourself in the way that a friend would, you know, that self-compassion. Try not to be too hard on yourself in the moment. Try to be really kind to yourself and talk to yourself as you would to a friend, or as a friend would talk to you. So those are the sorts of things that I would probably, you know, recommend if I was working with an athlete.
Is there a way to practice that stuff as well? You know, the sort of self-awareness thing. I know a lot of people talk about journaling, writing down some of those sort of thoughts and like as they're happening or kind of after they're happening. Is there a way people can get better at this?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think journaling is a big one, in that, again, for athletes mainly who are having like a bit of a crisis of confidence, I would encourage them to, at the end of each day, sit down and try and write like one or two, you know, good things or things that they were pleased with that happened that day, you know, as a little, you know, confidence reflection book that they can refer back to, certainly coming up to kind of a competition or whatever. But I think it's listening to the way that you talk to people and listening to the way that you react to people. So if you notice that when someone says something to you, you might respond in a kind of negative way, that then is potentially representative of the internalization of how you're talking to yourself. So the way that you talk outwardly is possibly reflective of how you're talking inwardly. You know, if you're kind of going, oh yeah, like this is really, you know, really hard, and listen to how other people are reacting, like just become aware of how other people are reacting to you and responding to you. So if people are kind of gravitating to you and seeing you as someone who they want to spend time with and see you as a source of support, then it's likely, again, that you're kind of be someone who's really good at talking positively and trying to cajole people and being kind of that cheerleader. If people are kind of going, oh, I don't want to train in the same lane as you, or like be close to, you know, it might be reflective of the fact that you maybe verbalize that negative self-talk, sure. You see. So I think it's tricky. It takes time and it takes practice. But I think once you start to do it, for me anyway, it becomes second nature. So it's making that first step, and that first week or two can feel quite tricky, and that you've got to have that real kind of focused attention, I guess, on thinking about, okay, is there a better way to look at this situation, or is there a better way to reframe the situation? But once you start to do it, I do think it becomes more natural. It is, you know, we'll talk about it in psychology. It's a skill that we develop over time. We know that if you practice talking to yourself in a more positive way or more helpful way, then that starts to become more natural over time. So I do think sometimes it's about not giving up too soon as well. If you feel that, you know, I'm not very good at this, you know, don't don't then go after sort of a few days, oh, I'm not very good at this, I'm just a negative person, I can't change, this is who I am. I think having that very fixed mindset is unhelpful. And so trying to kind of just give it a little bit more time as well is something I would recommend.
Confidence feeds confidence as well. So when I started running, I genuinely had no confidence to the point that I wouldn't speak in a meeting at work with 3-4 people in it because I didn't want to speak. And that was me at the very start of when I started running. And now, I mean, show me an audience, I'll but I mean that was part. Running gave me that, and it took.
Yeah.
It doesn't come easy, Julie. But exactly what you were saying, I had to change a lot about how I spoke about myself outwardly, which then exactly what you said made me think about how I thought about myself. And anybody that runs deserves to be running, deserves to be at a start line, and they're meant to be there just as much as the person next to them. But it takes time to work on it, and you can really work on that belief in yourself. And running was very much a tool that helped me get to that state of mind where I'm a lot more confident as a person now, completely different, and that's done through my sport.
We've mentioned your book a few times, Susie. There's no sort of better way to reflect than to write a book about your own life. So Trials and Tribulations, the running adventures of Susie Chan. What inspired you to write this?
I didn't want to write that, Peter.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie. Those 3 books came to me and I said no. And then they came back to me and they kept sort of like, are you sure? And I think it's because I had the whole imposter syndrome. Like I've said it earlier and I genuinely mean it. I'm just, I'm doing things that a lot of other people are now doing. I'm running these races and I didn't feel like I was particularly extraordinary in that sense. But I think what as I reflect, perhaps I was doing it earlier than others, and I like to think that see, our old unconfident Susie would never have said this, but I do like to think that actually what was quite an underground sport, and it was quite male dominated, and then I was just out there, and it happened to be the rise of Instagram and all those social media things. I just started documenting myself having a lovely time, just trying to run 35 miles today, and I think it just made it look more accessible and more friendly. And of course, it is a sport that's always been like that. And so I just didn't feel like it was. I didn't feel like I had any place to write a book, to be honest with you. They kept on asking, and then what happened was COVID happened. So out the back of COVID, I then thought I've really got to do Badwater, which was for me the pinnacle of my ultra running, and it's just one of the races which is a brilliant race. You have to be invited. There's only 100 people allowed in this race, and I got the opportunity to run it, and I just thought, I've got my final chapter. I know where this ends, and it was very motivating to know that I had to finish this race to get that final chapter. So all sort of came together at the right time, and I thought, okay, yes, I will write a book. And I didn't really enjoy the process because it was torturous. Because I was like, is this interesting? Now it's written and it's done. I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity, because it did give me time to reflect. And it's not really until you look back you realize how much you have done, how much you have grown, changed, and the incredible privilege that I've had and the opportunities that I've had, and I've been so fortunate to experience and be part of, and the people I've met. It was just the whole thing has been really enriching, and it's so cheesy, but running did change my life, and through running I have been on this fantastic journey, and I was a museum curator, and now I'm sharing my love of running with thousands of other people. It's a real privilege. I'm so lucky.
Awesome. And we'll put a link to the book in the episode description as well. So if you want to read about Susie's trials and tribulations, she talks extensively about some of the things that we've talked about today, touching on some of those themes. I would absolutely recommend it. Susie, what's next?
Well, I'm just sort of cracking on my job. I've got a few irons in the fire in terms of races I want to do. I have to be a little bit more mindful now. I used to just throw myself into any race, and mindful for two reasons. One, because I have to run for a living. I have to sort of run, be able to run and be available to run and to do my job. And then the other thing is I'm in the full throes of the menopause right now, and it's a little bit wild from one week to the next. And so I'm just trying to balance my energy, so doing a lot more strength, yoga, that sort of thing. So I have got a couple of races which I've been chatting about, and I think I've got a couple of 100-milers in me yet, and certainly a lot more social races with my friends. Just doing the thing I love, just more of the same.
No, well, what we'll do is we'll put links to all of your social media stuff in the episode description. So if people want to follow Susie and Julie, we'll do the same with you as well on Instagram or wherever. Like, check out the episode description. You'll find links to all of that stuff. To both of you, thank you so much. It's been a really fascinating glimpse into the world of ultramarathon running and ultra running. So to Dr. Julie Johnston, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out this morning to come and chat to us.
Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
No, it's been a pleasure. And to Susie Chan, again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your morning to come on 80% Mental.
Thank you so much, Peter. I've really enjoyed it, and I kind of want to have Julie's number on speed dial next time I'm deep into it.
Anytime, always welcome.
Sometimes I'm going to need a pep talk 2/3 of the way through. Thank you.
Well, that's it. That's been 80% Mental, another episode in the bag. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a comment at 80percentmental.com. Or you can find us on Instagram at EPM. No, you can't. You can find us on Instagram at 80% Mental or Twitter at EPM Podcast. You think I'd know my own social media handles by now. It's only been 5 years. Don't forget to subscribe as well, and you can download the back catalogue of awesome, amazing episodes that we've got there on the website as well. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time. I won't see you though, will I? Because it's a podcast. See, that's not how that works.